Thank you, brother. All right, how's everybody doing? Good. You know, I've always wanted to be on the red carpet, and now I'm on the red carpet. But they gave me instructions. They said, stay on the red carpet. So if I start to, I love to, wander a little bit. So if I start to wander, you guys yell, hey, get on the red carpet, kind of thing. All right. Again, I'm Dwight Brasher. I flew all the way from Portland, Oregon to be here with you today. And so it's exciting for me to be here. Who knows what happened 50 years ago this past Wednesday? Anybody? 50 years ago this past Wednesday, which would have been April 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And most of the people in this audience aren't old enough to remember when that happened, but unfortunately I am, for a number of reasons. So this past Wednesday, collectively, we mourned the anniversary of his assassination. And what a time that was back in 1968. And as I think back to Dr. King, and I was a young boy then. Dr. King, in 1963, August of 1963, went to Washington, D.C., and they called it the March on Washington. And that's when he had an opportunity to tell a nation about a dream that he had. And he talked about this dream that was deeply rooted in the American dream. He had a dream where he thought that one day his 4 little children could grow up in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And he told an entire world about this dream. And so I want to dedicate my 10 minutes or so that I have left to Dr. King, his memory, and his dream. Dr. King said that history is the long story of the facts. History is the long story of the facts. And then as the civil rights movement moved forward, and things got very violent in Alabama and Bull Connor and in Birmingham and throughout the South, he changed it a little bit, and he said, history is the long and sometimes tragic story of the facts. But in spite of that, he still had a dream that was for a better future for everybody sitting in this room, including myself. So I stand on his shoulders today. 1950, I believe it was, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. And in doing so, in refusing to stand up, she was standing up for all of us and the greatness that America represents. And so I want to tell you a little story. Back in the early 80s, I lost one of my best friends in a drowning accident. I tried desperately to save his life. Boat capsized, we're in the water. We're both, trying to survive. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. And I did. And for years, I wondered why. Why didn't I die that day out on the lake? Why was I here? And I read something that said that, and it's really, it brings back memories. But I read something that said, be the change in the world that you want to see. Be that change that you want to see. And I also read that the 2 most important days in a person's life are, one, the day that they are born, and then the second day is the day they figure out why, and they start to pursue that. Maslow had a theory of hierarchy, and you probably have seen it. It looks like a pyramid. At the bottom of that pyramid are the basic things that we need in life: family, love, security. And as you get toward the pinnacle of that pyramid, there's something called self-actualization. And that's when a human being realizes their purpose in life. Not the meaning of life. We'll never figure that out. But you understand why you are here. And so I went on a journey. I'm still here. Why am I here? Why is my friend not here? And so on this journey, I had to figure out who I was. How did I get here? And so I put this together to kind of show you what I found. And it was amazing. To me, this gentleman that you see, this is his last will and testament. He's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Walter Brasher out of Louisiana. Now, I knew my family was from Louisiana. My last name is Brasher. I found out that the last name is French, but I'm not. So how did I get the last name? It came from this gentleman right here. He was a doctor. He was a world-renowned surgeon. He was a farmer. And he was a slave owner. He owned my family. But not only did he own my family, he's my great-great-great-grandfather. And I was able to find that out through the record. So I am the son of a former slaves and the son of a former slave owner. This is page 10 from his last will and testament. You can't see it from there, so I'll just tell you what it's about. On this page, you will find Clarissa, who is my great-great-grandmother, and then Cornelius, who is my great-grandfather. And at the time of his death in 1861, he had my entire family valued at $6,000. And I don't figure we're worth much more than that now. I'm just kidding. You know, you can't get someone to do an appraisal of your family. I brought somebody in, and I have a Salvador Dali painting in my home, and they came in and they told me what it was worth, and I have other pieces of art. And then I said, well, how about I lined the family up, my wife and 2 kids. I said, what do you think? And he said, I don't, anyway. So this is page 10, had us valued at $6,000. So I guess that was pretty good. Now, this is a placard, that is put up in his honor. He was the first surgeon to successfully amputate a leg all the way up to the hip on a young slave person. And I always say, I just hope it needed to come off and he wasn't just practicing. I don't know. No, you have to think about that. Would you want to be the person? Hey, come here, I got a plan. But anyway, so he cut somebody's leg off. It worked because it had never been done before in the world, and he was the first. So I've got his DNA running through so I'm going to be cutting legs off after the show. Now, if you remember page 10, Cornelius Brasher decided he didn't want to be a slave anymore. And I guess back then that wasn't a very popular thing to do. But anyway, he ran away. He was a runaway slave. And he joined the first Louisiana Native Guard. And this is a picture of his group. And they were the first group of slaves to be mustered into the Union Army. So they fought for the good side, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. We are in Pennsylvania, so it's, Anyway, so he is my great-grandfather. And he was injured at the Battle of Port Hudson in Louisiana. And this was a certificate. I went to the Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., met with the folks there. I said, my great-grandfather was in this group, and he looked it up. He had a big book, and he turned the pages, and dust was flying everywhere. And he says, yeah, absolutely, he fought, and, we've got a record of him. And he said, if you go down the street around the corner, he said, there's a Civil War memorial there, and his name is engraved in it. And I went there and I saw them, and I was like so proud. I said, cool. This is my great uncle, my dad's uncle, Eugene. And my uncle Eugene, now this is the same, you got to keep in mind, this is the family line. So these are some great people. He was the first African-American deep sea diver. And I knew him. He died when I was 15. He was not only my uncle, but he was my godfather. And he used to tell these funny stories. And he's an African-American, and he's down below, 235 feet below the surface, and there's 2 white guys up there feeding him air. And he had to really make good friends with them, because then he said they would play with the air, off, on, that kind of thing. But he was an incredible gentleman. This picture here is from 1952, Ebony magazine. He was 55 years old, and he was still diving. So And this is another, Brasher finds some humor in grim underwater work, and so he was doing his thing, had a big knife and everything. This is my cousin, again, the same bloodline. This is my cousin Oscar, and he's about 70 years old, lives in Los Angeles. I talked to him probably a couple weeks ago. I asked him if it was okay if I used his picture. He said no, but I used it anyway. I mean, you know, some people don't like their pictures used, but, you know, that's all right. If you can't take a joke. But anyway, Oscar is, they say, one of the best trumpet players in the world today, and he's been playing. He started with Count Basie's orchestra some years ago. The young people won't know who that is. But anybody that's anybody in music, Oscar is a studio musician, which means he reads music. And so he plays music, and he goes to New York. He plays in the orchestra pit. He was on, the young people might have heard Dancing with the Stars. Well, he played on Dancing with the Stars in the orchestra there. Good man. So, again, I'm trying to find myself, right? So I end up in New Orleans, Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina. I just happen to be a transportation. They call me an expert. So I get a call in the middle of the night. We got 80,000 people in the Superdome in the convention center. Can you help get them out, Dwight? And so I went down to Louisiana, and this is a letter from the governor of the state of Louisiana saying, Dwight, you are officially a hero in our state. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. My wife said, we're leaving Louisiana, and you're no longer a hero because we live now in Portland. So, but anytime I go back to Louisiana, I'm considered a hero. And so this is me on the cover of a national magazine, you know, just trying to find my way. Again, that bloodline. So I took what happened in the past, and I turned it into a positive, right? And so I knew I had ancestors that had done incredible things. I, too, wanted to do something incredible, and I guess it ended up being helping 80,000 people, moving them out of harm's way. So I'll leave you with this. Dr. King, 6 months before he was assassinated in Philadelphia, he was speaking to a group of young people, many like the young people that are in here today, and he challenged them. He says, what is the blueprint for your life? You have to have a blueprint for your life. Where are you going? What is your future going to be? And so he threw that out there to them. And I'm sure much like the way you're thinking about it now, you probably really don't know if you're young, a really young person. But it's something to think about. You can't put up a building. The building that we're in would fall down if there wasn't a blueprint at some point, right? So he said this. He said, if you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, he said, just be a shrub in the valley. But be the best little shrub on the side of the reel. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. He said, if you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. Thank you.